Hello. Let's see if I can close this window. Happy holiday week, everyone. Hopefully some of you had a nice extension onto your weekends. And we are going to go over a topic tomorrow as well. But we're kind of going to do 2-for-1 today. And I was thinking about making separate videos, but since these are so closely related, we can kind of combine these two together. So we're going to discuss the blood of Christ and then the body of Christ. And some of these topics might seem with a little repetition, but I think with the way that it's described, we definitely have some different verses that we are discussing. And it's a good summary of everything that we've kind of talked about before, just with a slight. So let's start out with Matthew. So we're going to go start with the blood of Christ. And Matthew says chapter 26 to 27 through 29. So then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." So this is something similar that we may have heard maybe during the sacraments if you've gone to church before, which I'm sure a lot of you have. We hear that something similar to that. "Drink this, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant." Yes, yes, yes. So this is something that Jesus said during the Last Supper, and it really is more so of a promise, saying, yes, I will see you again. And there is an underlying significance behind this drinking of the blood, right? It is, yes, a promise of the covenant that he is making to them, saying, yes, I will see you again. And it does link them together, but that is more so in reference to the body of Christ. So, yes, blood is significance, as we learned in the past topics about sacrifice and atonement. This is really kind of what it's representing as well, that forgiveness of sins. So let's go ahead and dig a little deeper with Hebrews, which is chapter 9, verses 11 through 28. "But when Christ came as a high priest of the good things that are now already here, he went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle that is not made with human hands. That is to say, is not a part of this creation. He did not enter by means of the blood of goats and calves, but he entered the most holy place once and for all by his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption. The blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkled on those who are ceremonially unclean, sanctify them so that they are outwardly clean. How much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanse our consciousness from the acts that lead to death, so that we may serve the living God? For this reason, this is the mediator of a new covenant, that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance, now that he has died as a ransom to set them free from the sins committed under the first covenant. In that case of a will, it is necessary to prove the death of the one who made it. This is because a will is in force only when somebody has died. It never takes effect while the one who made it is living. Why, even the first covenant was not put into effect without blood. When Moses had proclaimed every command of the law to the people, he took the blood of the calves together with water, scarlet wool, and branches of hyssop, and sprinkled the scroll and all the people. He said, "This is the blood of the covenant, which God has commanded you to keep." In the same way, he sprinkled the blood of both the tabernacle and everything used in its ceremonies. In fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. It was necessary then for the copies of the heavenly things to be purified with these sacrifices, but the heavenly things themselves are better sacrifices than these. For Christ did not enter a sanctuary made with human hands that was only for God, us in God's presence. nor did he enter heaven to offer himself again and again, the way the high priest enters the most holy place every year with blood that is not his own. Otherwise, Christ would have to suffer many times since the creation of the world, but he has appeared once for all, the culmination of the ages, to do away with sin by the sacrifice of himself. Just as people are destined to die once and after that face judgment, so Christ was sacrificed once to take away the sins of many, and he will appear a second time, not to bear sin, but to bring salvation to those who are waiting for him. So, great. That's actually something that we just read, and I did copy and paste it from above to save a little bit of time during the transcription today. But hopefully that does kind of clarify and just confirm what I had just stated, the whole purpose of the use of blood in this tradition, right? So it is to cleanse and to get rid of the sins and the things of the past, right? And it does also offer a promise or a seal for the future and for your inheritance in the kingdom. So that is something to remember and to contemplate on, just how much that has changed, how we had sacrifices before with animals and now it is with the blood of Christ. So just something to contemplate on. And now let's not waste too much time today. Let's go on to Body of Christ, which is 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 to 31. Just bless you, baby. Oh, my baby is putting together a bed in the room. It's doing a great job, working very hard. Okay. So, just as a body, though one has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. For we are all baptized by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free, and we are all given one Spirit to drink. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now if the foot should say, "Because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body," and if the ear should say, "Because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body," it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, "I don't need you," and the head cannot say to the feet, "I don't need you." On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable, and the parts that we think are less honorable we treat with special honor, and the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty. While our presentable parts need no special treatment, but God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. Now, you are the body of Christ, and each of you is a part of it. And God has placed it in the church, first of all, apostles, second, prophets, third, teachers, then miracles, then gifts of healing, of helping, of guidance, and different kinds of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all have gifts of healing? Do all speak tongues? Do all interpret? Now, eagerly desire the greater gifts. So this is an interesting little excerpt here. This is from 1 Corinthians, and we've discussed this topic lightly, I believe, in the past, of just how, I would say, just with the passage of being on this earth, right, we are a part of one body of Christ, the way God has fashioned it. So we are all part of truly one body. And it's hard to comprehend that. I remember talking about this. It's hard to comprehend, but each of us has a role, each of us has a purpose, each of us has an importance. So it is not appropriate to go ahead and discredit or dispose of any one of these crucial parts of the body of Christ, of this spiritual body that we are all a part of. So that is a rite of passage that comes from earth. And it is interesting to think about how we talk about these gifts, and it kind of turns the gears in my head towards evolution. And it's actually asking, are all apostles, are all prophets, are all teachers? Do we each have all of these gifts within us as of right now? Or is this something that we are evolving to? So each of us in ourselves will then eagerly desire, eagerly obtain all of these greater gifts. Because I'm sure some of you have maybe 1, 2, or 3, or maybe just one, or maybe you do at this point have all of them. So it is something to think about, and it does kind of beg the question of evolution and how we evolve maybe to not need, I wouldn't say parts, because since the beginning of time we've all had all of the parts of our bodies, but we maybe didn't have certain features that we did in the past. I'm really just thinking of like body hair or something like that, right? But it does beg the question of evolution, and if we will ever transform into something completely different or something slightly different than what we were fashioned with. In this time period, I don't think that is foreseeable, but maybe somehow, and maybe later on we will see something like that. So something to think about. Next we have Hebrews chapter 2, verses 14 through 18. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by the fear of death. For surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants. For this reason he had to be made like them, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of people. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. So that is really the last of Hebrews, and I did kind of speed talk through all of this, but you see how short. Maybe if I were to break it up into 2 videos, it would have been a little bit shorter. So it's good that we did this all together. But just some points to touch on in Hebrew is the fact that Jesus, or the one who is sent, was not previously human, and he was made into human likeness to go ahead and carry out the tasks that he was required to on earth. So he had to be made in human likeness, and he had to carry out these specific tasks. So that's something that I've touched on before, but it's good to make sure and hammer into everyone's heads if you're not already aware. So now there was another point here, how he suffered and how he was tempted. So we all know, or we may be aware of the fact that Jesus did not sin. He was certainly tempted though. So although he did not commit any sin, he definitely was in the face of temptation very, very often, more often than maybe the normal average person on this planet. So that is something to think about. Just because he didn't sin does not mean that he lived this perfect, debt-free life, right? We understand that by listening to the Gospels and hearing the Gospels and reading the Gospels, that he definitely went through a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of what isn't mentioned in those books too. So that's something to consider. Jesus, although did not commit sin, he did not live a perfect life. And I'm sure that is something that we could all kind of understand, especially reading the Gospels. But yes, temptation is real. Temptation happens to all of us, including Jesus. And because he was able to suffer through that temptation and all of the above, he is able to help those who are suffering in that same way, or to a greater degree or to a lesser degree. But yes, he definitely did suffer a tremendous degree, as we could agree upon. But yes, that is really all I have to say on this one. Times 3, 14, or 4, it's 4. 4:14 here on the East Coast. Okay, that gives me some time throughout the day. I'm going to relax and have a day off tomorrow, so that's fantastic. Okay, well, God bless you guys. Have a great night. I will keep in touch with you tomorrow. We're gonna go over something. I think we're done with the bees. I think that's kind of what I wanted to finish today. We finished all of the topic of the bees, and now we're gonna go on to celibacy tomorrow. We're going to go on to celibacy. So I feel like that's relevant because there's a lot of recent trends I've learned that people are practicing. I would call intermediate celibacy, which is just taking breaks from having sex and then re-engaging whenever they feel healed or ready, which I think is very appropriate. I think that's interesting. Usually refers to the term of just waiting till marriage, period, but I think intermediate celibacy has become a recent understandable trend. So let's go ahead and do that tomorrow. Just 3 different sections on that, and then after that we're going to go into children and compassion. So I'm excited to see what those topics have, and we have several more C's to go over, then D's, and yada yada. I'm not going to go through the whole alphabet again, but yes, keep in tune, and we'll talk tomorrow. Bye.